Hey, what's up everybody? Welcome back. Brandon again. Today's video I want to talk about more changes or proposed changes within the IPF. So this is kind of follow up on yesterday's video where I talked about the Wilks coefficient going away. I thought that was more of a lighthearted video and it's not going to really affect many people unless you're competing for best lifter at a meet. At the end of the day, it's not going to really affect how you lift or where you lift necessarily. However, the IPF released some more of its proposed rule changes and it's causing a little bit of a controversy. I posted some of these on Instagram, which I'll link my Instagram in the description box as I always do, but I wanted to talk just a little bit about them. Before I get into it though, what I want to say is I'm also going to link the full text. It's a 27-page PDF that goes over all the proposed rule changes in addition to the ones that I mentioned. It also will give you some background about why they're proposing the rule changes themselves. And it's just an overall interesting read if you compete in the IPF and just want to know some of the inner workings. I'm also going to leave some contact information down below for those in the IPF if you want to reach out and voice your concern. That's thanks to Joe Stanek over at TSA who gave me that contact info to share and spread to raise awareness. Now, I think by far and away the biggest proposed rule change that is really grinding people's gears is in regards to the bench press. Now, with this, one of the proposed changes is to change the rules in the technical specifications of the execution of the lift to include the words, lie on the bench as flat as possible. And I think a lot of people are taking this to mean that they want to do away with arching. And I think part of this is because if you actually follow the IPF on social media, oftentimes when they share their lifters' performances when it comes to bench, a lot of the better benchers have very exaggerated arches, which leads to a lot of people flaming those posts and saying that this isn't powerlifting, it's not lifting, they need to use a flatter back. And I think the IPF is taking this to heart when in reality they shouldn't, because if you talk to anyone who really competes within the federation or who competes in powerlifting in general, they'll kind of tell you that this is just part of the sport. It's in the rule book that they can do this and it shouldn't be too big of an issue. Those who tend to take more issue with it are those who don't actually compete in powerlifting and think that you need to have a flat bench press because it engages more muscle, and that's a real bench. But that's another video. So that by far and away is the biggest rule, and I think it's causing controversy, but I don't think it should, because all it is right now is just the wording of the rule. It still states that you have your head, shoulders, butt, and feet flat on the floor during the bench press. So it's really hard to dictate how much or how little someone can arch, and I don't think they're going to have any leverage here to really make it better. I think one of the more concerning things for people out there who do have a big arch when they bench is another proposed rule change to avoid having people put their feet on the bench to help them set up. It specifically calls out here in the proposed rule change that they're doing this to, number one, eliminate people maximizing their arch, but then number two, to help protect the equipment. So I know personally for myself, someone who does not have a big arch, I have trouble arching. In order to get the most arch out of my back that I can with my mobility, I do typically set up with my feet on the bench so I can drive my head and shoulders into the pad itself and try to make as big of arch as possible and then set my feet. So doing away with that would definitely impact me, and I think it would impact a lot of people out there. I think Owen Hubbard comes to mind with his setup, which is pretty crazy if you haven't seen it before. But that would definitely impact some people, but I'm sure there's ways around it, because if you have the mobility to arch your back in that fashion, there are other ways. Some people might start grabbing the rack, or some already do, for instance, which could be then the next logical step in their progression to try to eliminate people maximizing their arch as much as possible. So I think this one probably will affect more people if it does pass. And last but not least, as far as bench goes, another proposed rule is to avoid having people be able to touch their feet underneath the bench, which I don't really see has a big impact anyways, but it's there and we're talking about bench, so I wanted to mention it anyway. So I think that's the one causing the most controversy. I think the second one that would probably cause the most controversy is in regards to the proposed rule changes for knee sleeves, saying that a lifter must demonstrate that they can pull their knee sleeves down and then back up prior to stepping onto the platform. So typically when you go to a USAPL or IPF meet, you have someone right before you step out into the platform that does basically a quick visual equipment check. In this case, I'm assuming what they're also going to have you do is demonstrate the fact that you can both take off and put back on your knee sleeves on your leg. So not completely remove it, but pull it down past the knee and be able to pull it back up, which to be honest, I think is extremely stupid in a sense. So hear me out on this. I do think we've gotten to a point these days where knee sleeves are extremely tight, so much so in fact that they are basically supportive equipment. And the whole goal of going raw lifting was to get away from supportive equipment, but people these days have found a way to get a lot of stuff out of their knee sleeves. And I, true, am one of them, but I think it's gotten a little bit ridiculous in some cases where people need to use plastic bags to get them on. In some instances that I heard of, using a hair dryer to heat up the knee sleeve to make them more pliable so they can fit the knee sleeve on, and then when it cools back down, it's kind of locked in place. So I do understand the need to kind of cut back on excessive tightness here. Again, that's going to be hard to monitor. I don't think the way they're going about it, though, with having lifters do that right before they step on the platform is the most optimal. Number one, it'll throw people off their game. A lot of people are listening to music, they get focused, whatever they're doing in their mind to get ready. But also, you figure you're all warmed up, you're ready to go, you're probably sweaty at that point. And even if I take a loose pair of knee sleeves and get really sweaty in them, which might be another topic for another video, those knee sleeves tend to really stick hard and they're hard to get on and off once you break a sweat. So it could pose a potential problem. Not to mention that when you're getting ready to go on the platform and lift, you're only allowed a minute. So that could really throw people off in terms of timing as well. So I think there's better ways to police this, namely having someone in the back room and just inspecting people as needed, which they already currently do. I believe there's a rule in place where someone can ask you to pull down your knee sleeve and pull them back up and demonstrate that you can get it on by yourself. I think that rule's already in place, so maybe if they just enforce that better, I think that would go away. Another rule that I found really interesting was in regards to weight classes. Now, this is for the women's weight class. There's a proposal to add a heavier weight class past the 84 to 84 plus. And I think I see a good reason for this, because if you look at the 84 kg plus division, which I want to say is around 185 pounds, Bonica Brown, who's dominated that for years, weighs roughly around 300. So there's a big discrepancy between the start of the weight class and where the best person is in that weight class. So it kind of is hard for a lot of people to compete. And the same can be said on the men's side, although I haven't seen a proposed rule change for that, because again, if you look at the 120 kg plus division, which is, I think, 270 pounds just about, Ray Williams dominates that. He weighs almost 400 pounds. So again, a big discrepancy. So it might be worthwhile to have one more weight class between those two. But then again, that brings up the discussion of how many weight classes is enough. There's already a lot out there. And at some local meets and instances, if you have all these weight classes, it's really just a participation trophy at that point. Because if there's 20 total lifters and there's 15 total weight classes, pretty much everybody is going to medal. So I see the need for it, and I think there's some work to be done. I don't know if just tacking one on at the end is the best way to do it. Maybe expand the weight classes some as well might be something to consider. But those are some of the rules that I found most interesting. There's a lot of other ones on there, discussion about underwear, discussion about all sorts of different things. So I really highly encourage you to, number one, read the article or the release if you're interested in it. And number two, if you don't like some of the things in there, reach out to the contacts that I list in the description box and let your voice be heard. But not before you leave a comment, leaving your voice and letting it be heard first, because that's what I make these videos for. In the meantime, as always, thanks for watching and stay big.